My daughter-in-law thought I was an old, weak mother easily deceived. But when I heard her plot, I realized I couldn't sit idly by. It was time to fight, not only to protect my property, but to regain my honor. My name is Margaret Johnson. I'm 63 years old, a strong and independent woman with dark skin. I've dedicated my entire life to my family. After over 30 years as a primary school teacher in New York, I retired, but I was always busy with housework, taking care of the grandchildren, and spending time on the home I had built with my own hands. This house wasn't just a place to live, it was where I poured my trust and love. I've lived here alone since my husband passed away. This house is the product of hard work, sleepless nights, and early mornings preparing breakfast for my son, Derek. After my husband passed away, I told myself I had to be strong to support the family. But I never imagined that it would be in this very house, which I poured my heart into, that I would face the greatest betrayal of my life. Derek, my son, is now an adult, married, and has a wife, Lisa. From the moment she entered our family, I felt a difference. She's a beautiful, intelligent woman who always knows how to make those around her feel comfortable. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something hidden behind that charm. She began to show too much interest in our family finances, and I, as a mother, couldn't refuse when my son asked for my help. One evening, I received a call from Derek. There was a hint of worry in his voice. "Mom, we need more money to pay off some debts. Lisa and I really don't want to bother you, but if you could help us just once more, we'd be so grateful." I couldn't say no. I understood their situation, and I couldn't turn my son away. I took more money from my savings to help them, but the more I helped, the more I felt something was off. A few weeks later, I noticed a distinct change in our relationship. Lisa started showing up more often, and every time we met, I felt a growing distance between us. She began involving herself in family financial decisions without consulting me. But what troubled me most was when I brought up sharing living expenses or mentioned the future, she would smile and avoid the subject. "Mom, you don't need to worry. We'll be fine," she said, in a sweet tone that felt insincere. This feeling became even stronger whenever we sat together. I started noticing changes in her behavior. Lisa visited me less frequently. Derek's calls became less frequent. And whenever I asked about my son, the answer was a quick explanation. "We're really busy, Mom." I still remember one weekend when I went to Derek's house, bringing along the apple pie I knew they both loved. When I knocked on the door, it took a while before they opened it. When the door finally opened, I saw Lisa standing there with a rather forced smile. "Mom, what a surprise. We're just tidying up a bit, no worries." Her answer seemed insincere, but I didn't want to make a scene. I walked in and saw some papers on the table. They seemed like important documents, but when I approached Lisa, quickly covered them up, making me uncomfortable. "It's just some regular paperwork, Mom, nothing to worry about," Lisa said, but I could see worry in her eyes. This wasn't the first time I felt something was wrong. I felt like I was being pushed out of my son's life. Everything was starting to feel unfamiliar, and I no longer felt like an important part of the family like I once had. One morning, while I was cleaning around the house, I happened to hear my phone ring. I rushed over and saw a voicemail from Lisa, but it wasn't meant for me, it was for her husband, Derek. When I listened to the message, my heart sank. In the message, Lisa said to Derek, "His mother is such a nuisance. I can't take it anymore. She has to go. We need to figure out how to take her house. If we put her in a nursing home, we can easily take all her assets." Her voice was so cold that I could hardly breathe. Those words hit me like a punch to the heart. That was the moment I realized I had been betrayed not by a stranger, but by the very daughter-in-law I had welcomed and trusted. I had spent my life sacrificing for my family, helping them with every penny, making sure they had a better life. But now they were plotting to push me out of my own life. They wanted to take the house, the property I had worked so hard to build, all because of greed. I couldn't let this continue. I knew that if I didn't do something, I would lose everything. But I also knew that I couldn't let myself be the victim in this story. I wouldn't allow this betrayal to become a reality. I've lived long enough to know that sometimes only by fighting can justice be served. And from that moment on, I decided I would do everything I could to protect myself and the house I had built. This feeling of betrayal was painful, but it also awakened a strength in me that I never knew I had. Even though they thought of me as an old, weak mother, I would prove to them that I was stronger than they could ever imagine. Lisa, my son Derek's wife, is a beautiful, intelligent woman who knows how to attract attention from everyone. From the moment she entered my family, I felt a special bond between us. She wasn't just a daughter-in-law, but also seemed like a close friend. I remember the early days when she would always call me, asking about my health and how I was doing, bringing little gifts whenever we met. At that time, I thought that my son's life would be better with someone like Lisa by his side. But the closer I lived with her, the more I started feeling something was wrong. It wasn't something obvious or easy to notice, but small signals that only a mother, someone who had lived a long life like me, could sense. At first, everything seemed normal. Their life was peaceful until the financial requests started. The story began one winter morning when I received a call from Lisa. Her voice was gentle, as if trying to hide something. "Mom, we really need some financial help again, you know. Derek lost his job," she said in her usual sweet tone, but there was a sense of urgency in her voice that I couldn't ignore. I wasn't struggling financially, but I couldn't help feeling uneasy when Lisa asked for help. She had never asked so directly before. In the past, it was always a simple, "Can you help us a little?" But this time it was different. Derek lost his job. That was the phrase I couldn't stop thinking about. Derek had always been a hardworking man, putting his family first. But when I heard Lisa say that, a vague feeling crept over me, making me uneasy. I knew Derek would never let the family go without. He would always find a way to work and provide for his wife and children. But why was it Lisa calling me instead of Derek? Why now, when I knew they didn't lack for anything materially? "It's just temporary, Mom. I'll pay you back once everything's settled," Lisa continued, her voice full of pleading. I could feel the tension in her words. Sweet words, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease in my heart. Is she hiding something from me? I wondered. As Derek's mother, I couldn't refuse. Every call from my son and daughter-in-law made me feel responsible to help. Although I had enough money to live comfortably, I couldn't stop thinking about the oddities in Lisa's story. How could she ask for my help so easily? Was I being exploited? The feeling of worry and doubt grew within me. I couldn't explain why, but deep down, I felt something wasn't right. I had spent my life caring for my family, and now my daughter-in-law, who I had seen as a daughter, was standing before me, asking for something I couldn't be sure was for the family's benefit or something else. But like always, I couldn't refuse. I decided to help them even though I couldn't shake the uncomfortable feeling inside. I sent the money to Lisa, believing that my son would handle things, thinking it was just a temporary rough patch. However, my worry didn't stop there. After helping them once, I began noticing a repeating pattern. Lisa didn't stop at that. Every time I called to ask about their health, she would bring up the financial situation. "Mom, we might need a little more." "I'll pay you back later," she said, with the same sweet tone as if it was just a normal request. I began to feel like an endless wallet, and the more I gave, the further I was being pushed away. I didn't tell Derek as I didn't want to upset my son, but the unease kept growing. How could I know if the money I sent was really helping their family, or if it was part of a scheme I hadn't recognized? The feeling inside me grew like a game I couldn't control. And then, one evening, sitting alone in my familiar living room, I realized that it wasn't just money that I was losing, but control. My relationship with Lisa was becoming more tense, even though she still smiled and said sweet things. But I no longer felt the sincerity in her words. Something had changed in me. I no longer felt like the respected mother I once was. The relationship between my daughter-in-law and me was no longer simple. And I began to wonder, was I being exploited in a game I wasn't aware of? Were these financial requests just the first step in a bigger plot? That vague feeling grew bigger, like a small fire, and I couldn't put it out. From that moment on, I decided I wouldn't just sit and wait. I needed to find out the truth. And when this truth was revealed, I wouldn't let anyone take advantage of me again. But I never imagined that this discovery would lead me to a shocking secret I never could have imagined. One spring morning, as the warm sunlight filtered through the living room window, I sat alone enjoying my usual cup of tea. The house was so quiet that I could hear the ticking of the clock, each second passing like a distant echo. It was an ordinary day, and I had no idea that everything was about to change because of an accidental phone call. When my phone rang, I didn't think much of it. I looked at the screen and saw it was a voicemail from Lisa. Sometimes she would send messages to check on my health or chat about random family matters, but this time something felt different. I don't know why, but a sense of unease washed over me as I clicked on the message. Lisa's voice came through soft as usual, but there was something cold, even indifferent in the way she spoke. His mom is like a shadow in the house. I can't stand it anymore. We have to do something to take her house. Just get her into a nursing home and we'll have it all. After hearing that, my heart seemed to stop. Her words passed like a breeze, but there was something in them that left me frozen. We'll have it all. That phrase was like a lightning bolt in the dark, and I suddenly realized something terrifying. I had lived long enough to recognize the change in someone's voice. Lisa was no longer the daughter-in-law I had loved. She spoke about me, about her own family, as if I were just an obstacle, something they wanted to remove. In that voicemail, there was no concern or care for me, only a clever plan to seize everything I had spent a lifetime building. I stood still, unable to move. Her words I never imagined coming from my daughter-in-law, hit me like a punch to the heart. Just get her into the nursing home. I could not forget that line. I had given everything for this family. I had sacrificed everything to raise Derek and help them, and now I was the target of their plot to steal what I had. I wondered, did my son know about what was happening? Did Derek know that his wife, the woman I had once considered a daughter, was plotting to remove me from my own life? For the first time in my life, I felt betrayed to a degree I couldn't bear. From a woman who once took pride in her family, I now had to face a harsh truth. Lisa, my daughter-in-law, was scheming to use me to take everything I owned. I clicked replay and listened to the message again. Each time I listened, the feeling intensified. We'll have it all. That line echoed in my mind like a curse, repeating over and over. They were planning to get rid of me so they could take the house I had built with my own sweat and tears, the place where I had raised Derek, the place where I had seen him grow into the man I was proud of. The whole house suddenly felt alien to me in that moment. I looked around, no longer seeing the warmth or love I had once felt. Everything seemed empty and cold. It was then I realized I couldn't continue living in this lie. Suddenly, a wave of anger surged within me. Why were they doing this? Why would Lisa, the daughter I had loved as my own, be so heartless as to use me like this? And why didn't Derek see what was happening right under his nose? Did he really know what his wife was plotting? Or had he trusted her so blindly that he had no idea she was doing everything to seize our family's wealth? That feeling of betrayal left me unable to sit still. I couldn't let my daughter-in-law and son think of me as an old, weak woman who could be manipulated. I had lived long enough to know that in some cases, only by fighting back can you get justice. If I did nothing, they would take it all, and I would never have a chance to reclaim what I had lost. I sat down and thought, that's right, I couldn't let myself be manipulated like this. I had to act. But first, I needed to understand the whole situation. I couldn't just rely on what I had heard. I needed proof. I needed to make sure I wasn't being deceived. A plan began to form in my head. I wouldn't let this betrayal happen without a fight. I was not an old, fragile woman. I could do this. And when everything came to light, I wouldn't just reclaim what I had lost. I would show Derek that sometimes the truth hurts those we love most. I stood up, gripping my phone tightly. A decision had been made. No more hesitation. I would do whatever it took to protect myself. They would not easily steal my house and hurt me again. After hearing Lisa's voicemail for the third time, I felt like a huge wave hit me, leaving me standing still, unable to move. Everything around me seemed to freeze. The ticking of the clock in the living room suddenly became deafening. I've sacrificed my whole life for them, and now they're trying to take everything, I whispered to myself, each word feeling like a knife cutting into my heart. Everything I had done for this family, all the sacrifices I had made over the years, was now being trampled by my very own daughter-in-law. Every step I had taken, every moment I had spent with Derek and Lisa was once filled with pride. I had poured all my energy into raising my son. I had stood by the family when troubles came. Everything I had today, everything I had built, was the result of years of hard work. I had given my time, my energy, and even my own dreams to ensure my son had a better life. Both Derek and Lisa were people I cherished, and I never thought that betrayal would come from them. Though sometimes exhausted, I always took on the family's responsibilities because I trusted them. But now I had to face a painful truth. The people I loved most were scheming to take everything I held dear. Every step I took, I couldn't stop thinking about what Lisa had said in the voicemail. Just get her into the nursing home and we'll have it all. That sentence haunted me, repeating in my mind like a terrifying refrain. The feeling of betrayal wasn't from a stranger, but from those I held closest. It was something I could not bear. I sat down in the armchair in the living room, my hands gripping the phone. My eyes blurred with tears, but I refused to cry. I wouldn't allow myself to be weak. In that moment, I didn't feel powerless. Instead, I felt an anger rising within me. I couldn't sit still and let this betrayal unfold. No, I couldn't. The anger surged, but it wasn't blind rage. It was the anger of a woman who had been betrayed, a woman who no longer had room for weakness. I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let my daughter-in-law and son think of me as someone easy to manipulate. I stood up, my eyes burning with resolve. I couldn't let everything continue like this. They would not easily get what they wanted. I had lived long enough to know that sometimes you had to fight to protect what was valuable. I was not a helpless old woman. I had lived a lifetime of battles, and this was one I had to win. A plan began to form in my mind. I couldn't do it alone, but I wouldn't be alone in this fight. I would gather evidence, I would find out everything, and I wouldn't let them escape the consequences of their actions. I didn't just want my house back. I wanted to show Lisa and Derek that betrayal had no place in family. The anger within me grew stronger as I thought about their plans. Lisa thought I wouldn't discover it, but she was wrong. She didn't know that I had lived long enough to recognize the signs of deceit, and I wouldn't let her scheme succeed. I took a deep breath and made up my mind. It was time to act. I wouldn't let them steal everything from me so easily. I would collect all the evidence from shady conversations to strange financial dealings. I wouldn't let them get away with it without paying the price. I felt stronger with each step I took. I couldn't stay quiet. This feeling of betrayal wouldn't disappear if I sat back and hoped things would change on their own. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful. But I also knew that when the truth came out, I would find a way to protect myself. A woman, when pushed to the brink of pain, will find strength she never knew she had. And I, Margaret Johnson, would not let anyone defeat me. Even if the betrayal came from my own family, I wouldn't give up. I would fight to protect my family, to protect my home, and to protect everything I had built. And when justice was done, everything would be restored to its rightful place. After hearing Lisa's voicemail, I knew everything had changed. I couldn't sit still and wait for this betrayal to unfold any longer. I had to think of a way to act. I couldn't continue being the weak old mother in their eyes. This betrayal had awakened a strength in me that I never knew I had. I was determined not to let them easily seize what was mine, and above all, I couldn't allow this family to keep deceiving me without facing the consequences. "We'll have it all." Lisa's words kept repeating in my mind like a challenge. They thought I wasn't sharp enough to realize the truth. They thought I wouldn't do anything when I was pushed to the edge, but they were wrong. I would protect everything I had spent my life building, and I would do whatever it took to expose their true faces. I began to make a plan of retaliation. The first step was to gather evidence. I couldn't just rely on vague words and feelings anymore. I needed clear proof, so when the truth came to light, no one could deny it. "She couldn't deceive me again," I whispered to myself as I walked into my office and opened my computer. It was time for me to take the reins, to find the traces Lisa and Derek had deliberately hidden. I began secretly recording their conversations. The only way to get accurate information was to hear it directly from them. I couldn't trust anyone at this point, not even Derek, my son. All I could do was follow their every move and record their words, hoping to find the evidence of their scheming. Each day, I pretended to be the frail old mother who knew nothing about what was going on. But in my heart, I had become a quiet warrior collecting the pieces of information. I began recording Lisa and Derek's phone calls, conversations they thought were private, but for me, those were the keys to unlocking the secrets they had been hiding. One afternoon when Lisa called Derek, I secretly recorded their conversation. I heard the calculating words she spoke, words I could never forget. "His mother doesn't know anything. We just need to get her into a nursing home and we'll have it all. The house, the assets, everything will be ours." I couldn't believe my ears, but I couldn't deny that I had heard each word clearly. The evidence was undeniable. Lisa and Derek had planned to get rid of me and take the house I had worked so hard to build. Everything I had done for this family, every sacrifice I made, was now being treated as an obstacle in their path. But I wouldn't let them achieve their goals so easily. I understood all too well that in the face of betrayal, the only way to protect myself was to fight back. I continued to watch their every move. I went through the financial documents, the papers I always kept carefully in this house. I discovered some strange expenditures in my accounts. Lisa and Derek had withdrawn money without my knowledge. In the past, I thought it was money I had lent them, but when I checked again, I realized the money had been withdrawn without any clear reason. They were using my money as if it were their own without ever informing me. I dug through the financial documents searching for signs of fraud, and then I found them. Fake documents, papers I never signed, financial reports I knew nothing about. Lisa and Derek had forged documents to prepare for transferring this house. I couldn't believe they had set everything up in advance, just waiting for the right moment to carry out their plan. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I realized that everything I had trusted about this family had been a lie, but I couldn't give up. I had sacrificed too much for this family, and I couldn't let them take what was rightfully mine. I continued to gather more evidence piece by piece, day by day, making everything clearer. I knew that only solid proof could help me confront them, and I wouldn't stop until they paid for what they had done. You won't deceive me again, I told myself, gripping the documents in my hand. I couldn't let them continue to exploit me. I couldn't let them get away with these wicked actions without facing consequences. I was ready to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I wouldn't let my family, the ones I loved the most, deceive me again. With the evidence in hand, I knew the time had come to act. I couldn't wait any longer. The plan for retaliation had been formed, and I wouldn't stop until the truth was exposed. Lisa and Derek wouldn't easily get their hands on my house. They would pay for everything they had done. Now I was ready to face them, not as the weak old mother, but with the strength of a woman who would never be defeated. Once I had gathered enough evidence, when I was sure that everything had been planned long ago, I couldn't hesitate any longer. The feelings of anxiety and uncertainty in my heart were replaced by anger and determination. I had sacrificed too much, put all my heart into this family, and I wouldn't let this betrayal continue. It was time for me to face Lisa, to make her understand that I was not someone she could easily deceive. That evening, when I knew Lisa would be coming over, I felt a tension rising within me. The whole house seemed unnaturally quiet. Only the ticking of the clock in the room could be heard. I stood before the mirror looking at my reflection, a 63-year-old woman, but in my eyes there was still the resilience of a mother, willing to do anything to protect what she had built. That was when I realized, no matter how cruel life had been, I would not step back. When Lisa entered the house, she still wore her usual smile, but I could see the tension in her eyes. "Mom, why are you sitting here alone? We've prepared dinner. Why don't you come join us?" Lisa said, her voice sweet as always, but I couldn't help but notice the unease in every word. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stared directly at her, and then, with all the calm I could muster, I spoke. "You think I'm a weak old mother, don't you? You think I don't know anything." My voice wasn't loud, but each word cut through the air like a sharp blade, revealing everything I had discovered. Lisa froze, not expecting me to know everything. Her face turned pale, as if a ghost had passed through her. "His mother doesn't understand. Don't worry," she said, her tone no longer confident. She tried to divert the conversation, but the confusion on her face betrayed her. All of Lisa's plans had been exposed. I couldn't stop now. The anger and heartbreak surged within me. I've spent my whole life taking care of this family, raising Derek, giving you a life like this. But you've used my trust to plot to take everything I have. You think I don't know? You think I'll just sit by while you take everything? The more I spoke, the more my heart swelled with anger, but there was also pain. This was a betrayal from someone I had loved like my own daughter. Lisa looked at me, her eyes filled with confusion. I could see fear beginning to spread across her face. But then she tried to regain her composure, trying to brush off the words I had just spoken. "Mom, don't think too much. We just want what's best for you. We're worried about your health, and you're still living alone all by yourself." Her voice began to weaken as though she was searching for a way to hide the truth. I wouldn't let her lie to me any longer. "Worry about me?" I laughed, my voice dry and cold. "You're worried about me? Do you even realize that you've been planning to push me out of my own life, to take my house, the one I built with my own hands? You think I don't see all the signs?" I couldn't stay silent any longer. Every word, every sentence carried with it the pain and fury of a lifetime of sacrifice. I had lived a life of giving, and now I couldn't let it all be destroyed by her greed. Lisa went silent, her eyes cast down as if she couldn't face the truth. She no longer had the confidence to continue lying. But I knew I had to expose everything. I've heard everything. I have all the evidence. The conversations, the forged documents, I have it all in my hands. You can't deceive me anymore. Lisa took a step back as if afraid I would do something unpredictable. She didn't know what to do, didn't know how to handle the truth I had just revealed. After a long pause, she finally spoke, but her voice no longer held the arrogance it once did. "Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. It's just, we can't keep living like this. We don't have the money to maintain this life, Mom." I looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. Money. Right. You think money solves everything? I've spent my entire life building this with my own hands, working tirelessly, and now you want to take it all. Don't you understand that what you're doing is betrayal, that you're tearing apart the values I spent my life creating? My eyes were full of tears, but I didn't cry. I knew I had done the right thing, no matter how painful this truth was. Lisa stood frozen, unable to respond. She couldn't find any words to explain her actions. I knew she realized she was wrong, but I also knew that even if she apologized, it was too late. "I won't let you and Derek hurt me anymore," I said, my voice firm and resolute. "I will protect what I've built, and if necessary, I will go to the ends of the earth to expose everything you've done." We stood there in silence, the tension thick in the air, as if everything was about to explode. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. This fight wasn't over until I got justice for myself. Lisa, no matter what she said now, couldn't change the truth. She had underestimated me, and I wouldn't let this betrayal go unpunished. The truth always has a way of revealing itself, no matter how hard people try to hide it. After the intense confrontation with Lisa, I couldn't stop thinking about what she had done. But deep down, I knew I hadn't discovered everything yet. There were still signs of fraud lingering in my mind, and I couldn't let this matter end so easily. I was determined to find out everything. A week after that confrontation, I began collecting more information about my financial documents and health records. I couldn't keep living in uncertainty. I needed clear evidence. What I had heard from Lisa made me suspicious, but I wanted solid proof so that no one could deny it when the truth came out. One morning, while going through my papers, I stumbled upon a strange document. It was a medical report stating that I was suffering from memory loss and no longer had the capacity to care for myself. A quick glance wouldn't have revealed anything unusual, but I felt something was off. This report was supposedly written by a doctor I didn't know, and more importantly, I had never visited this doctor. "No way," I muttered to myself, my hands trembling as I turned to the next page. That's when I realized what I had feared. Lisa had collaborated with some people in the public sector, including doctors, to forge medical documents. They wanted to make it look like I had lost my mental faculties, creating a fake record of my condition to legitimize putting me into a nursing home. This was the final step in their plan to seize my property. She thought I wasn't sharp enough to understand, but I would show her that I was still clear-headed enough to fight back. Anger and shock overwhelmed me. Not only had Lisa been involved, but others had joined in this conspiracy, using forged documents to eliminate me from my own life. I had lived long enough to realize that these people didn't just want money. They wanted to control my life, strip away everything I had worked my whole life to build. Like an invisible wall, they had constructed a network to strip me of my right to decide for myself, to turn me into a woman who could no longer defend herself. I sat down, clutching the papers I had just found. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't stop now. I couldn't let everything pass like this. This wasn't just a battle for property, it was a fight for my right to live, my right to decide for myself. I had to expose the truth, make all those involved pay for what they had done. We'll have it all. I heard Lisa's words echoing in my mind. She thought I didn't know anything, but now I knew everything. Not only her, but also those in the public sector had been dragged into this plot. I couldn't let them turn me into someone who couldn't make her own decisions. I would prove that I was still sharp enough, strong enough to protect myself. A plan began to form in my mind. I would have to confront those who had created these fake documents. I couldn't trust anyone in the healthcare sector anymore, and I would find a way to expose them. But first, I needed solid evidence to combat this deception. I decided to contact a lawyer I trusted, someone who had helped me with legal matters in the past. I couldn't do it all alone, but I knew that with the help of an expert, I could find a way to fight back against a system that was working against me. I wouldn't let this betrayal go unnoticed. Lisa and those involved would pay for what they had done. When I met the lawyer, I felt a shift inside me. I wasn't the weak old woman anymore, but a decisive woman ready to face the truth and fight for what I deserved. I handed the lawyer all the documents I had collected, from the forged medical reports to the evidence of financial fraud. I can't let them take everything from me, I told the lawyer, my voice firm. I'll fight for justice. The lawyer looked at me, his gaze full of respect. You've done the right thing, Margaret. We'll bring everything to light, and we won't let anyone take advantage of you again. The support from the lawyer gave me even more confidence in my decision. I knew this was just the beginning of a long fight, but I wasn't afraid. I was ready to face whatever came my way. Lisa's and the others' schemes would be exposed, and they would pay for their actions. When I returned home, I felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from my shoulders, but at the same time, a new sense of freedom washed over me. I was no longer imprisoned by lies, no longer afraid of betrayal. I would fight, not just for my house, but for my right to live, for the values I had protected throughout my life. Finally, after months of preparation, I was ready for the biggest fight of my life. Not just to protect the property I had worked so hard to build, but to show Lisa and Derek that they couldn't easily manipulate me. They had thought I would remain silent, that I wouldn't have the strength to stand up against them. But they were wrong. With each passing day, I grew more determined to fight for fairness, for the dignity of being a mother, and for everything I had sacrificed throughout my life. When I decided to file the lawsuit, I wasn't just aiming to get back what was mine. I also wanted the betrayers to understand that even though I was an older woman, no one could underestimate me. I wouldn't let them continue exploiting my love and sacrifice. They would face the consequences of their actions. I remember the first day I walked into the courtroom. As I stepped in, a sense of nervousness and tension engulfed me, but I knew I couldn't back down. As I walked in, I wasn't just representing myself. I was representing every mother who had dedicated her life to her family without ever receiving what she deserved. I raised my head high entering the courtroom, with an unshakable determination. Lisa and Derek sat across from me, their gazes cold, but I could sense the unease in their every movement. Derek, the son I had once seen as my own, now looked at me with unfamiliar eyes. Lisa, my daughter-in-law, sat beside him, her face filled with false confidence, but I knew deep down she was trembling. Because I was no longer the weak mother, the grandmother they had once taken for granted. I had the evidence, the resolve, and the strength to fight them. When my lawyer began presenting the evidence, everything felt like it was moving in slow motion. Each recording, each forged document, each medical report was presented in front of the court. I could clearly see the confusion on Lisa's face. She hadn't expected that all her plans would be exposed to the light. The conversations she thought were private, the documents she thought no one would find, everything was laid bare. Everything had been uncovered. We have irrefutable evidence that Lisa and Derek conspired to seize Margaret's assets, my lawyer said, his voice steady. The forged documents, the recordings, all of these are undeniable evidence. I looked at Lisa and Derek, trying to remain calm, but inside my anger and pain surged. I couldn't believe that my son and daughter-in-law could do such things. I couldn't believe they were willing to do anything for greed. "I'm not here just to protect my property," I said, my voice strong, though my heart was filled with sorrow. "You plan to steal what I have, but now it's time for you to pay the price." My words rang through the courtroom like an unbreakable declaration. Lisa fell silent, no longer able to meet my gaze. She no longer held the confidence she once had. Derek, though he tried to maintain a calm demeanor, I could see the anxiety in his eyes. They knew they were facing an unavoidable truth. The courtroom was quiet for a long moment, as if waiting for the final conclusion. My lawyer continued presenting the evidence we had collected. Every word, every document was a powerful blow to them, leaving them with no room for rebuttal. I could sense Lisa's disappointment when she realized that all her plans had failed. I was not someone who could be easily defeated, and I would fight for what was rightfully mine until the end. "We are fully prepared to continue the lawsuit if necessary," my lawyer said. "Margaret will not let herself be exploited any longer. The evidence is clear, and we are confident that justice will be served." I felt strength surging within me as though I had stood firm throughout my entire life, and now was the time to defend what was rightfully mine. Lisa and Derek may have thought they controlled everything, but I wouldn't let them continue to manipulate me. I didn't just want to get back what was mine. I wanted them to see that betrayal would never go unpunished. When the trial ended, I sat back in the courtroom, clutching my file full of documents. Although everything had been laid out clearly, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I didn't want to be here, facing those I had loved all my life. But I knew that sometimes the truth had to be exposed, and justice had to be served, no matter how painful. I didn't know what the final outcome would be, but I knew one thing for sure. I had done the right thing, and no matter what obstacles lay ahead, I wouldn't let this betrayal go unpunished. Lisa and Derek would have to pay for what they had done to me, and I would fight until justice was served. The legal battle finally came to a conclusion. The tense months, the sleepless nights, I had faced every challenge with resilience. Each day, I felt the weight of betrayal, the feeling of my rights being violated, but I didn't give up. I knew that if I didn't stand up, everything would slip away like a nightmare I couldn't change. But now I stand here in the courtroom, and I see the light of justice shining at last. I had won. The trial ended with a verdict I had been waiting for all along, Lisa, and Derek would face the consequences of their fraudulent actions. All the evidence I had gathered from the forged conversations to the falsified financial documents had exposed their schemes. Their deceit no longer had a place in the courtroom, and everyone knew the truth. I had not only protected my assets, but had also shown them that they could no longer manipulate me. Lisa and Derek sat stunned in the courtroom as the judge rendered the verdict. Lisa's eyes no longer held the same confidence as before. She couldn't believe that all her plans had failed so miserably. Derek didn't say anything, just lowered his head, unable to look at me. They had thought they could deceive me easily, that I wouldn't notice everything they were doing behind my back, but they were wrong. At last, justice has prevailed, I whispered to myself. My heart lightened as I heard the judge declare the final ruling. I stood strong, not just because I had won this trial, but because I had reclaimed what I truly deserved. The house, the assets I had worked so hard to build were now back with me. When the court rendered the verdict, I looked at Lisa and Derek. Their eyes were hollow, their confidence gone. What they had done could no longer be denied. The truth had been exposed, and now they had to face the consequences. I didn't feel triumph, but I felt justice in my heart. They had unjustly taken everything from me, and now it was their turn to pay. Lisa was convicted of forging documents and financial fraud, while Derek, though not directly involved in the forgery, had conspired with Lisa in the plan to seize the property, and he couldn't escape responsibility. They would face severe legal consequences, not just financially, but in terms of their reputation. As I left the courtroom, a sense of relief washed over me. Finally, I had regained what I had lost: the house, the assets, and more importantly, my respect and dignity. I no longer felt like the frail elderly mother. Instead, I felt like a strong woman, someone who had stood up against the betrayal of her own family. Back at home, I stood and looked at the house I had built over so many years. These walls, these belongings, they were all filled with memories, sacrifices I had made for this family. I saw in this house my own resilience, my determination not to give up, and I knew that I had done the right thing. I wouldn't let this betrayal destroy my life. I had fought and I had won. I didn't know what would happen to Lisa and Derek after the trial, but I knew they would have to face the consequences of their actions. Everything they had done could not go unpunished. As for me, I had regained control of my life, and I would never let them take it again. When I sat down in the living room, a sense of peace washed over me. I hadn't let the pain and betrayal break me. Instead, I had stood tall, stronger than ever before. That feeling was like a gentle breeze blowing away all the anxiety and tension. I had found my freedom, my respect, and most importantly, my trust in myself. Justice had prevailed, and now I could live the rest of my life with peace of mind. I had fought for what I deserved, and I had succeeded. Now was the time to enjoy the peace, no longer having to worry about the dark schemes of others. Lisa and Derek may have thought they could easily deceive me, but I had shown them that the truth always finds a way to surface, and when it does, no one can escape it. Now I was the victor, not only in the courtroom, but in life itself. After all the months of fighting, I had finally reclaimed the ownership of my house and my property. I stood before the house that held so many memories, the sacrifices of myself and my family. But now the sense of anxiety was gone, replaced by a peace and freedom I had never experienced before. Justice had won, and I had won against myself. I smiled, looking at the house I had built over the years. Each brick, each wall was soaked with my sweat and dreams of giving my children a better future. But now, no one could shake my trust. No one could hatch cruel plans or exploit my feelings for their greed. They thought I was vulnerable, but I had shown them that I could stand strong. I no longer had to live in the shadows of deceit. The days of doubt, the worry about the schemes around me were gone. I had learned that no one could easily take what I had built, especially not when I had the strength and determination to protect it. Everything I had done, all the efforts I had put in, were valuable, and now I didn't have to fear that someone would come and take it all because of a little greed. My new life started here. I had been tired of living under lies for so long. Now I wouldn't let anyone, even family, control my life. It was time for me to live for myself, to enjoy the rest of my life without worrying about the calculations of others. I had given everything to this family, sacrificed everything for my children, but now it was time to live for myself. That day, as I walked out of the courtroom, I no longer felt sorrow or pain. Instead, I felt a new sense of relief and freedom. That feeling was like a fresh breeze blowing through me, making me feel young again, stronger than ever. I was no longer the woman of the past, fearful and anxious about everything around me. I was Margaret, a woman not easily defeated, a resilient mother who had overcome every difficulty, and now I was ready to face new challenges in life. I finally found myself, I thought to myself as I stepped into the house. With every step I took, I could feel the change inside me. No more feeling lost, no more feeling controlled by anyone. I didn't live in the shadow of fear or worry anymore. It was time to live freely, to do what I wanted without worrying about what others would think. With victory in hand, I hadn't just regained the property I had fought for over the years. More importantly, I had regained my inner strength. I no longer viewed the world through the lens of sacrifice and being exploited. I had learned that sometimes to protect yourself, you have to be strong. You have to stand up against what is undeserving. I didn't need to live for anyone else anymore. I would live for myself because I deserved it. In the following days, I began to change my life. I tidied up the house, creating a new space for myself. Every wall in the house carried the marks of old memories, but now I looked at them with a different perspective. I no longer saw them as just old belongings, but as symbols of my resilience, of what I had gone through to get here. I began to redecorate the house in my own way, bringing a fresh new energy to it. A space that I could truly call home, where I could finally enjoy the peace I had always longed for. This life is mine, I said to myself as I admired the changes in the house, and I will live it to the fullest. My new life wasn't just about the house, it was about how I saw the world around me. I began spending time doing things I loved. I took painting classes, started writing in a journal about my experiences, and spent more time taking care of myself. These new habits made me feel more fulfilled. I learned to love myself more, no longer thinking about those who had betrayed me. One afternoon while I was painting in the garden, I suddenly realized something. Life can be very harsh, but if we stand firm and never give up, everything can change. The betrayal of Lisa and Derek, the pain I had gone through, were now just old memories. I didn't let them define my life. I had found freedom, respect, and most importantly, myself. This new life, with all that I had achieved, was proof of the power of resilience and the determination to never give up. I can stand strong. I smiled at myself looking at the painting I had just finished. It was a painting of a lush green field with rays of sunlight shining in the distance. I looked at the painting and thought, that's my life, a new bright life full of hope. As spring arrived, the house I had lived in for so many years now shone brighter than ever. Every corner of the room had become a part of me, a testament to the resilience and strength I had rediscovered. I no longer lived in the shadows of deceit, no longer hindered by the schemes of those I had once called family. Every morning when I woke up, I felt the freedom, a freedom I had never thought I would have. The dark days had passed, leaving behind a different woman, a new woman, stronger, braver, no longer afraid of the ones who had once made me suffer. The quiet days, seeing the child I raised betray me, were now just a thing of the past. I was no longer the silent mother who endured without speaking. I stood up, and I won. Now standing in my own home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace in my heart. Justice had been served. Lisa and Derek had faced the consequences of their fraudulent actions, and I, Margaret, had regained not only my property, but also my dignity. They thought I would never find out. They thought I wouldn't have the strength to fight them. But they were wrong. At last, I've stood my ground. I smiled at myself in the mirror, a gentle but proud smile. Everything had changed. From a mother who endured, I had become a decisive, confident woman who would never allow anyone, even family, to deceive or manipulate me again. For me, this victory wasn't just about property or rights. It was the victory of perseverance, of self-love, and above all, taking back control of my own life. Now I didn't need to prove anything anymore. This life is mine, and I will live it to the fullest. Stepping out of the courtroom, I walked out not only with my property, but also with a strong belief in myself. No one can defeat me, not even my own family. That was the most valuable lesson I had learned. A woman, even if she is older, can still be a warrior if she is determined. I don't hate Lisa. I don't hate Derek. But I've learned that sometimes forgiveness doesn't mean accepting someone's actions. Forgiving is to free yourself from the pain caused by others. And I did that. I don't need to live for anyone else. I only need to live for myself. That's the greatest awakening I've had. In the following months, I will continue building my new life, unaffected by those who betrayed me. I will continue learning, creating, living fully, and never letting anyone take away my freedom, my respect, and my dignity. This life isn't about what you have, it's about what you dare to fight to protect, I told myself looking ahead where the sunlight was shining. My journey had just begun, and I was ready to face whatever came my way. Margaret was no longer the resigned mother. Margaret was a strong woman no one could easily manipulate or defeat, and I will live this life to the fullest with no regrets.